Good afternoon, and welcome to what we hope will be another informative webinar brought to you by Rags to Riches. Our topic today is cleaning tools, supplies, tricks, and teams. After 4 years of doing Rags to Riches and leading my own cleaning service and working with a lot of owners across the country, I have had enough experience now to find some common themes that are running through all companies that I think would really help a lot if you are aware of some just basic things. If you know these already, please excuse me for taking your time. If you do not, hopefully you will learn a lot today, and maybe even if you already know it all, you will pick up one trick or one thing that will help you. Some of the common things that I've found, common themes, are it is very difficult for people to accept change, not only your cleaners but also owners, that cleaning processes, if you really want a process, has to come from the leadership side of you. If you want your cleaners to follow a process and not clean the way they want to clean, kind of like you do it, but truly follow a process like they're on a line, that has to come from your leadership side. That can never come from your management side. And what I mean by that is you have to believe in it 100% totally as a leader, or there's no way you can convince your cleaning people to follow that process. You have to believe that it's going to make your job and their job easier, or you'll never follow that process. And you have to believe that it's going to increase your bottom line profits. So what are some of the tools I'm talking about? Well, first and absolutely most important is a cleaning apron. Why is an apron so important? Well, because it decreases damage. The concept of having an apron and following the process so that you use the apron, if you just give your cleaners an apron and think they're going to know how to use it, don't even bother to give them one at all. But if you teach them how to use it, the concept is that everything they need is put immediately back in their apron so they always have one free hand at all times. So when you're at that new client's house and they're of my generation, my age, where we were taught to hang things on the wall with a stick pin or a straight pin, a needle, because it would hold a huge, heavy picture, and we know it's got to be handled delicately because we never have fixed that. Your cleaner goes in there and starts dusting and it starts to fall. At least they should be steadying the picture with one hand and dusting it with the other. They've got a hand there free to help them grab it and save it as it's dropping. Another advantage of an apron that will decrease your damage is the bottles. The bottles hang on the aprons so they don't set that bottle on a wooden table while they're cleaning the glass end table next to it with glass cleaner. All glass bottles, all sprayable bottles can very easily get wet on the bottom, and as soon as they set that down, you could immediately have a ring. When you have an apron, it never touches anything but the loop. They also have a tendency to use a stronger tool because it's right there at their fingertips. Much damage is done by cleaners scrubbing too long, too hard with the wrong tool and should have been using something else. Like even though scrubbies are non-abrasive, they can still leave a small scratch on glass. Whereas if you would have sprayed it with glass cleaner and used a razor blade scraper, there would be absolutely no damage whatsoever. They will have a tendency to go to that stronger tool if it's right at their disposal or easily at their fingertips, which takes us, of course, to increased quality. If they have the stronger tool, they're going to clean what they run into. If they don't have the stronger tool, there's a very good possibility they will bypass it. Go, oh, I'm going to get to the bucket or go to the car where I left the razor blade scraper and come back and get that wax, and they never do. The owner calls, something happens, the owner yells at them for the last cleaning job that wasn't happy. All they can think about is that. They totally forget the big pile of wax on the customer's end table. They leave, and now they get another customer calling the office who's unhappy, all because that razor blade scraper wasn't in their apron. It wasn't easily accessible. Believe me, if it is, they use it. Believe me, if it's in the car, they don't. No rags left behind, no bottles, no tools. How often do you get that call from that client that goes, well, they must have been in a hurry today. They even left a couple rags behind. Cleaning was horrible. I mean, it's like, oh, my gosh. And does it set the customer off? Of course. When they walk in their house, one of the first things they see is a dirty rag sitting on a table, sitting wherever the cleaners left it. It turns that client off Well, it turns them on, and they start checking that house intensely. Plus, your rags, your bottles, and your tools are pricey. You got to replace it. They call, they yell at you. They want to know if you're going to come all the way out there and pick up that $1.29 bottle in the next day or so. They'll leave it on the front porch, and they hope it'll be gone. So every time you leave it there, it's a constant reminder to them of how, every time they pass it, it's a reminder to them of how horrible your cleaning was, and now you don't even care enough to come get your bottle. So it's just a nightmare. If they leave those bottles hanging on their aprons until they're done and they put it into the bucket at the end of the cleaning of the house, they can't leave them behind. It is also very quality driven because when you have everything on you, you do not pass it and go, I'm going to come back and get it, as I mentioned with the wax. You clean it right then and there. Like some companies do 2 trips, one for dusting, one for Windex. If you do that, you're passing it. There's a very good possibility you won't get it the second time around. It increases efficiency because there's no wasted steps. You don't have to walk out to the car to get the razor blade scraper. You don't even have to walk to the bucket. It's right there at your fingertips. You don't pass anything. You don't go around a room twice. And there's no need to drag a bucket with you. I know many companies say, well, I take the bucket with me. I'm not exactly sure how you do that. When you're cleaning your way around the room, then you go back and get the bucket when you need some more. I mean, plus is down and up every time you pick up that bucket, so it's more wear and tear on the body. I don't know why you wouldn't use an apron. But if you decide, and if I've talked you into, as a leader, to use an apron, then the $64,000 question is, what kind of an apron do you use? What kind of fabric it is made out of is really a moot point. It doesn't really matter what kind of fabric it is, as long as it is heavy enough that it will last for a while. If they come with either 8 buckles or ties, I will say I prefer the buckles because they don't loosen. However, they can break when you're laundering them. What color it is also doesn't matter. I always get a kick out of people calling me. I only handle them in gray because I make $1 an apron. I hate this part of my business, but you have to have them if you're going to follow any kind of a process of cleaning. So I do handle them so that they're reasonably priced, but I only handle them in gray. And people will go without aprons before they will get them in a color that doesn't match their uniforms perfectly. And my comment to that is this. Does anybody know what color your aprons are before they get to your house? No. So it has absolutely nothing to do with you selling your product, your service. Secondly, if your aprons are gorgeous and beautiful and match your uniforms, but you forget some cobwebs in the corner and you forget to do the top of the refrigerator, do you think that's going to keep them from canceling your service? They're going to go, oh, but their aprons were so cute. Doesn't make any difference. What's important is, do your cleaners know how to use those aprons? That's what counts. And then, of course, cost is a factor. They can run anywhere from $10 an apron to $30, $40 an apron. Also, the pocket size is very dependent. If you just get 3 basic pockets, they will be less expensive than if you get the aprons that are tailored to the item. However, there's something to watch there. When we first opened up our cleaning service, we bought the aprons that actually hold every item, like the tile brush stood straight up. Our cleaners hated them because every time they leaned down, the tile brush stuck them in the ribs, which is true. We actually went to making our own, and we made just 3 big pockets because you can throw stuff in there and dig it out very easily. The next tool we need to talk about is a tile brush. This is one of the tools that goes in the apron. The tile brush should be plastic. It's great for bathroom faucets. It's also great for kitchen faucets. It gets around those corners and inside. The next item you will need is a razor blade scraper. The razor blade scraper should be retractable. So that it is easy to put the razor blade away each time, and it keeps it very clean. It is great for problem areas such as wax. It's wonderful for oven doors. It's great for that stuck-on little teeth gunk and stuff that you get on the bathroom mirrors. You do need to make sure that you spray plenty of Windex. If your cleaners do not spray enough disinfectant or Windex or something wet on the glass, there will be scratching from even a razor blade. It's wonderful for glass stovetops. I have a glass stovetop. I've had it for 16 years. It looks brand new because I've always used a razor blade scraper on it. I do have clients who have now gone from the very expensive stovetop cleaner to razor blade scrapers, and they're very happy with them. Again, you do have to train your people how to use them right. They work great for paint and nail polish when women are drifts of nail polish on glass tops, but you have to make sure you spray enough liquids. The last item we're going to talk about is the feather duster. The feather duster is such a handy tool. I know it is questioned a lot by people as to whether or not it should really be used. I know that some companies have gotten very comfortable with the flat Swiffers and things like that, but I don't know how you do an item such as a table that's wicker or that has little holes in it. I don't know how you get between the holes with something that's flat. Of course, you have to use long strokes when you're feather dusting. That's what keeps the dust from flying all over the place. You don't want to be a French maid. Another item that a feather duster is very, very handy for is plants. I'm not exactly sure how you get plants clean if you do not use a feather duster. Another area where feather dusters are nice are areas like inside this fireplace where cobwebs are going to stick between those handles, and the only way you can get behind those handles and between everything is with something that has feathers on it. Of course, one of the biggest disputes, questions between cleaning services is whether or not you should be doing mini blinds. I think you should dust mini blinds every single time you clean a customer's house. I do not believe you should wet wipe them, because when you are taking and wet wiping them, if they are very dirty mini blinds, it's just going to turn into mud, and you're going to slide all of the dirt to the string that goes up and down that's going to get remarkably dirty. If you use, again, a Swiffer, all you're doing is your feathers cannot get between the slats. Feathers, if it's a full enough ostrich feather, you can get between those slats, and you can keep those blinds as like they're brand new. I had blinds in my first house. I was cleaned every other week or weekly, of course, depending upon how the schedule flew. But I was in that house for 12 years, and my mini blinds looked like I just bought them. I know you cannot do that with a flat duster. It has to have something with feathers that can get between the blinds. We have a rule had a rule in our company that if clients had more than 6 items on a surface, we would feather dust and not hard dust. We would feather dust those items. Feather dusters are perfect for that, but if you need to get between little things, there's no feathers to help you get the dust out. This is a very clean client, so we feather dusted the items. We are hard dusting the surface, even though there's more than 6 items. But if every single surface we hit was like this and they weren't a repeat client, we would definitely feather dust. So a flat surface can't get between those items, and there will still be dust. A feather duster can. As you saw in the video, the feather duster goes in one pocket, and the very handy whisk broom goes in the other back pocket. A whisk broom is such a handy item to have for pet hair. It can take the place of using a mini vac. It's much faster, especially for those clients that aren't paying extra to have their furniture vacuumed. Obviously, if they're paying extra to have it vacuumed, you need to vacuum it. But if they just have a lot of pet hair, I get that whisk broom out and away we go. The other place where whisk brooms are remarkably healthy is when there's a bug next to a coffee table leg. Maybe or a piece of popcorn, unpopped popcorn. You're in a living room that has a coffee table sitting in some pretty plush carpeting, and you see this piece of popcorn or bug is probably a better example, a dead bug next to the coffee table leg. Good possibility that the duster will not go down there with their fingers and get that bug out because it's pretty disgusting. Instead, they'll let the vacuum person do this. Vacuum person comes along, and of course a couple of times they're going to try and get that bug with their vacuum cleaner. So a couple of times it's just human nature. They bump that vacuum cleaner against that leg, and there's your damage. Whereas if the duster would have just had a whisk broom in their back pocket, they could have pulled it out, flicked that bug out of there so that the vacuum cleaner wouldn't have even had to stop and them get the bug out, or take a chance at making this damage happen. It's just a handy tool to have. It's also great for wire screens and fireplaces. Sometimes when you especially go into these first-time ins, there are actually cobwebs that kind of form between these little holes in the fireplaces. This is a great way to get it out with a whisk broom. So, cleaning cloths. What kind of cleaning cloths are the best to use? I say, hands down, it is microfiber rags. I know there are still people out there using terry cloth rags. Oh my goodness, there's a million reasons not to use them. One is simple volume. When we clean 95 houses a day, well actually back then we were doing about 80 houses a day, we were using 7,000 terry cloth rags a week. Our supplies person was working 60 hours a week, getting 40 hours of overtime. We switched to microfiber rags, literally went down to 2,600 rags, and her hours went down to 36 hours a week. And we were able to give her some calculation hours to go with that. It took about 28 hours to do those rags because you don't have to shake the lint out of them anymore. They're very easy to do, and you're looking at 1/3, 1/4 the volume. So what kind of cleaning cloths should they be? They should be 2 colors. You should have a dusting rag, and you should have another type of rag. The dusting rag, when you are using your dusting rag cannot touch your other rags. When you put your dusting rags away, they must be held in a different container and separate plastic bag from the bag that the rest of your rags go in. Otherwise, you will ruin you will ruin the other rags. Obviously, if your dusting rag can't touch your other rags, you're going to have at least two different colors. I recommend that one color be a darker color because you cannot bleach these rags because they're microfiber. If you bleach them, you will take out those little fiber particles, apparently, I'm not a scientist, that actually grabs all the dirt and the dust. I can tell you these microfiber rags are phenomenal. You cannot wash a lot in a load at one time because they are holding so much dirt that they won't be able to move around in the washing machine enough. You will see how much dirt these rags will hold, which is why you cannot use a lemon oil or pledge in these rags and let them touch something else because those little microfiber pockets hold the lemon oil or the pledge. And then when they wash, they release some of that, but not all of it, and they release it into the other microfiber rags. So obviously when you're trying to do glass with them and you've got oil on, it's going to smear. It can never shine. So you can actually use water only with microfiber rags when they're new. You don't even need glass cleaner. They clean that well, but you will not be able to use them again if any of your dusting rags touch any of the other ones. Some companies get different colors for different rooms, so the bathroom isn't contaminated with the other rooms. I'm saying if you can just get your cleaners not to have the dust rags touching the other ones, you have accomplished a feat. Microfiber rags do work phenomenally well. Because of the little pockets, when you are cleaning, you can actually feel what that rag feels like you can actually feel it touch the dirt and stop because it's trying to grab onto it. There is such a change in quality when you change to microfiber rags. I could see it in my own home. I went to microfibers a few weeks later. I didn't buy enough. A few weeks later, my cleaners did my house without it, and I said, oh, my God, my house didn't look near as good today. What was it? And it was the microfiber rags. And we cleaned without them for many years. I was very happy with the quality of our cleaning. But once you see the difference of microfiber rags, you'll never go back to the other one. The cost, of course, is very important. You can spend a lot of money on microfiber rags. I think what's more important is what I just said. Make sure you give them enough. If you spend too much money on your rags, you're not going to give them enough, and then they're not going to be able to dry things to a shine because they don't have a dry rag to wipe with. Also, I think that the more expensive they are, the thicker they are. My concern is that when they're that thick, it will slide right over and they won't be able to feel the food that it's trying to pick up because it doesn't automatically pick it up. You have to scrub a little bit there, and if the rag is too thick, you cannot feel that. Also, you're going to lose some rags. Make sure if you go to microfiber rags, and I even did this with terry cloth, that you check every clean rag out and you check every dirty rag in because rags are expensive. My supplies person paid for herself by checking rags in and out when we were doing 3,000 microfiber rags a week. We did have our employees sign something saying they would pay for these missing rags, and we had them pay for it. More for the reason of we just didn't want to be losing them because, again, if you leave them at a client's house, you're going to hear about it, so you have to pay for them and you have to listen to the complaining. Count them out, count them back in. Believe me, they'll stop losing their rags. Rags should be folded in a quarter, once and a half, and again. If you're using a rag flat like this, partly the reason you fold them is because they'll last longer. You only get one part of it wet with the disinfectant cleaner. You still have the other side you can flip over and dry. But if you use the whole rag, everything on that rag becomes wet. That is why I recommend that owners prepare the rags for the cleaners and not have the cleaners prepare them themselves because they won't take the time to do this. But believe me, the quality and the efficiency and the speed and how many products you use is totally dependent on how you let those supplies go out of your office and how prepared your cleaners are with their supplies. So spray bottles are our next issue. They're very important. Most of them are your basic 24-ounce spray bottle. If you have these and you can't find anything else and you start using the loops, fill those bottles halfway full, because they're going to be too heavy otherwise. If they're halfway full, they'll be just fine. Do make sure that every single time before they put those bottles in their loops to start a new house, they tighten those bottle tops really tight because they do loosen up, which is why I would recommend that you look for locking tops. They do make them, but normally you can only find them for 24-ounce bottles. I would say put half as much in a 24-ounce bottle and get a locking top. There are 16-ounce bottles. They're not as heavy, but again, then there's no locking tops on them. There are also 3-ounce bottles at the Container Store that have locking tops. For your Windex in the kitchen, in the bathroom, and the duster, 3 ounces of Windex is more than enough to do a house, and they can have a gallon backup in their cars and fill them in between, which is what our cleaners always did. They filled between houses and kept gallons in their cars. So the only thing you would be concerned about then would be a larger bottle for the disinfectant cleaner. You can get these bottles in colors, which is great. We always had a blue one for the glass cleaner, and we always had a yellow one for disinfectant, so they can quickly see what they're grabbing. Of course, cost, if you're going to get locking and smaller, they are going to cost more, but I think it's worth the damage factor to not worry about that bottle of Windex dropping off the top and spilling all over somebody's Oriental rug, which, by the way, I did do once. Just make sure you go grab something fast to clean it up with. Long dusters. Long dusters are an absolute must. I'm amazed at how many companies call me after they get core and say, where did you buy that? I can't believe you don't already have one. I don't know how you're getting the cobwebs from ceilings, how you're getting the top of picture frames where they're really tall pictures. A long duster should be about 12 feet. I prefer the wool because they have a full head. What you're concerned about is the top of the duster starts becoming matted and flattened as it's used a lot, and then the stick that it's connected to can scratch the walls and the ceilings if there isn't sufficient coverage on that. The head normally screws into an extender if you get a good one. They come in 2 to 3 sections, the extenders do, in order to go 12 feet. If you have a large car, you can go with 2. If you have a smaller car, you're going to need it to collapse more, and you'll have to get 3 extenders. You can get duster covers now, which I highly recommend. They're very inexpensive, run about $2. They'll cover the duster because wool dusters do, once they get full of all that dust and dirt and cobwebs, they get very matted. When you wash it, it's hard to keep them fluffy. If you just put a duster cover over the top of it, when that gets dirty, you take it off, put a new one on, and throw that into your washing machine. And by the way, they are microfiber, so they work wonderful on ceiling fans because they just, again, suck up that dirt. You do take 2 trips around a room in order to do the long dusting. The first trip, of course, is done with the long duster. Once you finish that, you go back and start the short dusting. So what you're going to do is start at one corner of the room, and you're going to do the taller bottom first. As soon as you go as far as you can reach. You always work from, as I said, from the top to the bottom, and you can work from left to right or right to left. I don't care. But what you're going to do is all the high dusting as far as you can reach. When you get done with the high dusting as far as you can reach, then you want to do the baseboards before you take another step, because otherwise you're just going to have to go backtrack your steps. So as you can see, this lady went as high as she could. Now she's coming back and reaching as far as she can with the low dusting. Then she's going behind her without taking any steps and getting the wire lighting. Then she will move to the next area and get the high dusting, the low dusting, and the lighting, and she's getting the lighting area in that area right now. The kitchens offer us, now we're going to talk about a few tricks in different rooms, just a couple of items that people have not seen before that, again, I want to share with you if you have not seen them. One of the opportunities to use a little trick is in the kitchen. How many times have you encountered a microwave that looks like somebody just shot a gremlin off in it? It's got stuff stuck to the bottom, to the top. You can scrub for hours in order to get that microwave clean. A trick is simply take a glass, fill it with water, cup, anything, put it in the microwave for about a minute, well, about 2 minutes actually. Let it get really steamy hot. Believe me, when you go back to that microwave and you take that hot water out, it will be so easy to clean that microwave. You'll just be able to spray a little bit of disinfectant clean there, and it will wipe right out with the rag, rather than having to use something like a scrubby or something abrasive that, again, can scratch, but it takes so much effort. This will be like cleaning a clean microwave. Supplies are expensive, and time is expensive. So we do want to make sure that our people know how to use the supplies appropriately. We have a fabulous opportunity to save some money. If your company is one of the companies that uses Tilex, which our company did, we're in Texas, and after our green clients used us a couple of times and got sick of the mildew, they would say, what can I do to get rid of the mildew? And of course you have to use Tilex. So we were a Tilex using company in Austin, Texas. It can build up in a week. And what we did was we checked every single bathroom and sprayed it with mildew before we began to clean the bathrooms. So we would take the Tilex bottle, put a rag over the top of it so we didn't spill any Tilex, and we would check every bathroom out, spray it so that Tilex could work before we went back and took water and just washed it all off. And that's what normally happens is people spray the Tilex, they climb right in there and start scrubbing, spray it down, rinse it off, and it's not doing any good. If you go to those bathrooms first, by the time you get back to the first bathroom, that's had an opportunity to work. You do, of course, need to make sure that you have a rag over the top of that Tilex so you don't spill any Tilex on any carpeting. If you do, get water on it immediately. You can always save carpeting by dyeing it if you put water on it. Otherwise, the dye will not take. So be very, very careful with that. The next little thing we want to talk to you about is checking for excessive hair before you clean up a bathroom. If your bathroom is very, very dry and there are tons of hair in that bathroom, get out your mini vac and vacuum up that hair before you start getting anything wet. Once you get that hair wet, it sticks in those microfiber little pockets and you can never get that hair out. So just go ahead, grab the mini vac, get that hair off the floor while it's still dry. This particular large tub had a lot of plants in it with a bunch of dry stuff on the bottom. They never use it. All that dirt almost turns in, and you certainly don't need to be trying to get mud out of a bathtub. If you get that hair and that dirt up first, and lots of people use their jacuzzi tubs for plants, and you got to get it out and get it shining, get that mini vac out. And our last hint is useful in every room in the house, and that's cleanser. A little bit of cleanser goes a long ways, but our cleaners seem that the more cleanser the better, and they're wasting cleanser and a lot of time trying to rinse that all out of the sink. When you take a new bottle of cleanser, take the top off, it's sticky, stick it back on with at least with 2 holes showing, and that way when they shake, they can only get so much out. That concludes our tricks and tips. But let's talk a moment about the actual basic cleaning process and the concepts that were put together by Jeff Campbell when he did speed cleaning, and actually when all of us as owners have been working on making things go better. When you do a bathroom, we say you take 3 trips. You do the long dusting, then you come back and do anything that needs cleanser and scrubbing and rinsing with water, and then you come back and take a 3rd trip where you dry everything and shine it. A lot of my clients weren't taking 3 trips. When they got done cleaning the shower with Comet and rinsing it, they would stay right there and dry it. The reason you take that third trip is so that that shower can spend some time air drying, so you don't go through 10 microfiber rags when only 2 would do. The second thing I've noticed is when you try and dry it when it's wet, hair does indeed still stay behind, and it's hard to pick up. If you come back one last time and you spray it with disinfectant cleaner and you buff it all dry, you will get that last hair out there and out of there, and the client won't come home and see a hair in the bathtub. Also, I have some clients who shine the faucets, but they leave the tile air dry. I guarantee you there will be water spots on those tiles. I used to say as part of my sales pitch every time on the phone, we buff dry everything we're finished, so everything will be show ready. There will not be any water spots. I've had some customers who have changed their cleaning style now, have decided to go back and buff it out, and they say, oh my goodness, it really does look a lot different. So let's talk about cleaning and the process we use and teams and individuals. I'm going to, if you're working on individuals, the rest of this webinar will not mean anything to you because it's how to team clean the most effective way. So since the people who will be listening, I'm going to talk about teams. I don't think there's any question in this industry that everybody knows that I'm a strong believer in team cleaning. I believe it is more fun. You know it's impossible to have synergy with only one person. You have to have more than one. So team cleaning is going to give you that synergy. It also gives you interdependent thinking. When you're alone and you're trying to solve a problem, there's nobody there to help you solve that problem. Interdependent living is always easier and better than independent or dependent living. You can't have interdependent living work atmosphere when you're not on teams. It's more efficient. You don't get as tired as fast. Mentally, you're not as tired because if you run into some horrible client who you'd like to kill, at least you have somebody to laugh with it when you leave there and not sit there and go, oh, I hate my job, I hate my job, I hate my job. And it's physically less taxing because you get to rest between houses, whereas if you're doing them alone, you rest less often. It's safer. I oftentimes think that this debate of whether or not you should go solos or teams will be put to bed soon because of rapes and killings. And actually, I said this to one of my clients, and she said it just happened in my city. A lady responded to a person who was looking for a cleaner on Craigslist. When she got over there, she was raped. So I do think that all of you do, and I don't mean to put any fear into you, but I do think you need to put some thought into the safety of sending out a solo cleaner in today's world. There's a faster training time, no doubt about that. My clients who have 3-people teams, which is my ideal situation, and the model I definitely prefer and that I use, your new cleaner only has to know how to do bathrooms. You can leave them there for 30 days until they have the quality perfect and they have their speed up before you need to teach them anything else. 2 things, your quality doesn't go downhill and you don't have to listen to talk about how slow that person is because pretty soon their speed's going to be there if they're only cleaning one area. Not near as much breakage and damage in the bathroom. Keep them there for a while. They don't have to learn anything else. For consistency's sake, if you have teams, when somebody is absent, you still have 2 people who have been in that house. If you're 2 people on a team, at least 1. So when you walk in the door and the client sees one familiar face, they won't be near as upset by all the turnover or all the absences your company has. So if you decide to work with teams, how are you most effective? Most people go, as a matter of fact, I read something on LinkedIn one day where somebody said they were going to go to teams, how much more time should they allow, and I almost gasped. 3 cleaners are faster than 2, and 2 are faster than 1, I will guarantee you. So if you have 2 people cleaning, both cleaners change the linens on the bed. It goes much faster than twice as fast. It takes 1/3 the time for 2 cleaners to change the linens on the bed as 1 cleaner doing it alone. Obviously, they don't have to walk from side to side. When they're done, the first cleaner, who is usually the team leader, the supervisor, dusts the entire home. We have the person with the most experience doing that because that's the chances for the most breakage and damage, and it takes the longest to check. If you're going to check somebody's dusting, you might as well check it yourself. You've got to pick everything up and make sure that they didn't leave any rings. Well, then you've got to pick it up. You might as well dust it yourself. They also clean the kitchen and the kitchen floor because that's the second greatest area, most difficult area to check, and also has some tendencies for breakage and damage. And then they help with the mopping. So what does the second cleaner do? They clean all of the bathrooms. Then they start vacuuming all the carpeted areas. they vacuum all the wood and vinyl areas, and if it's almost all wood and vinyl areas, they might end up doing some damp mopping. When the supervisor team leader is done with their area, they will come and help damp mop. I recommend that all cars, if they are teams, have at least 2 mops in their car because that's where one person is going to end up watching the other one. Now, if you're working on a 3-person team, the dusting person and the kitchen person change the linens on the beds. The 3rd person goes to the bathrooms. They do take the longest. When they get done changing the linens, the dusting, which is usually the supervisor again, and the kitchen person, the dusting person will dust the entire home first. When they get done dusting, they'll vacuum all of the hardwood floors, the tile or the vinyl floors. Then when they're done with that, they'll start mopping. It is their responsibility to determine what the kitchen person should be doing when they get done with the kitchen. The kitchen person is going to clean the kitchen. This is where people love to hide because they'd love to spend 40 minutes in something that should take 20 because they like to just lollygag around. So watch your kitchen person. Try not to put your laziest person in the kitchen. When they get done with the kitchen, they go to the furthest of the room of the house and they start the large vacuuming. They vacuum all the carpeted floors. Then when they're done with that, they take the mini vac and they vacuum the wood, the tile, and the vinyl floors. Then they help with damp mopping. What I'm saying here is they need to go to the supervisor first before they start that vacuuming and say, is it time for me to vacuum? Based on how the bathroom person is doing, that supervisor, if it's a new person, they might want to tell the kitchen person to grab the half bath or grab a bath before they start vacuuming. Because if everybody's done with all their work and your 2 people are standing there watching the bathroom person because they're new or slower or the bathrooms were very, very dirty in the first time in, you're wasting time. You all need to get done at the same time. That is where you need a strong team lead supervisor who manages that job, and where it's managed is as soon as the kitchen person is done, do they grab a bathroom or do they start vacuuming? Of course, the 3rd person is going to clean the bathrooms. When they get done, they help with the vacuuming or normally the damp mopping. Again, what they do will depend upon how the other people are doing in that house. In team cleaning, never, never, never change positions for numerous reasons. One is the quality will always be better if they're cleaning something they are familiar with. They will be more efficient. They know exactly where the bathrooms are. I'm saying they know exactly where the waste baskets are. They don't have to waste time in the kitchens opening up all the doors, wondering where they are. Or worse, missing it. The client's already called and said, you missed the trash. The new cleaner doesn't know that ever happened. They don't know where this mystery trash place is, and they miss it again. You'll probably lose that client. Why did you change people? So again, there's less complaints. There are also less complaints from the cleaners. Oftentimes when you have a cleaner change positions, you got to listen to the cleaner that took the job complain about how horrible the last cleaner did. If you're dependent upon your cleaners to tell you how bad your cleaners are, you are never going to make it. You shouldn't have your employees telling you where your problems are. You need to figure out a way to find that out yourself. If they do the same thing all the time, it's also physically less taxing. I've actually had some clients who've gone to the cleaners to tell them they're not going to change positions anymore, and the cleaners go, oh, that's going to be really hard on my body doing the same thing all the time. To that, I would have to say, then runners wouldn't even be able to crawl because all they ever do is use their legs, and if that's really bad for that muscle, then they wouldn't be able to continue to do that sport. When you want to be really good at something, you do it again and again and again, and it makes that body part stronger. So the body parts they're going to use, if they continue to use the same body parts, are going to get stronger, not weaker. Never change teams. If you've got teams of 2 or 3 people and they come, one of the partners comes to you and says, I don't like this person, or the supervisor comes and says, I don't like that partner, don't pass that problem to somebody else. Because if that person is not any good, you need to fix them or get them out of your organization. Moving them from one person to another is never going to do any good. And if indeed you tell people you do that, you're going to have a constant flow of people in and out of your office. Every time they have one itty-bitty little problem or somebody looked at them wrong, they're going to want to change teams. That's harder on your clients than it is on you. Don't even start it. Because if you continue to change these people, you'll never get to step 5. You will never have a mature team because they have to go through the 5 steps that a new employee goes through to become mature and to not have to come to you all the time. If they're constantly changing partners, they can't get to that maturity level. If you're going to present wearing aprons or a cleaning process to your cleaning teams and they have never done this before or they've done it and it hasn't worked, you need to remember that kicking this off is the leadership part of your brain, not the management side. So number 1, you have to really believe that this is a good move for your company. If you feel it is, then it's the leadership side that's going to bring you forward. If your people are not opposed to it, have a fun kickoff meeting. Explain to them how it's going to happen. Give them a schedule of who you're going to train when, and you have to train each person individually when you're teaching them a process. But if you're going to teach even this new stuff to them and say, hey, let's start using aprons, but you're not going to be die-hard about the process, which I don't understand, but if you're going to do that, you can have a fun kickoff meeting if everybody's behind it. If you have one person, as much as one person who's opposed to this, you have to do this on one-on-ones. You cannot kick any new ideas off to a person, to a group of people, because if one person is opposed to it, there will be no synergy there at all. Never have a potential explosive meeting, and that would be potentially explosive. And if it does blow up, there goes this concept. You'll never be able to roll it out. You want to go one-on-one with those people and find out what's the root problem that they don't want to wear aprons. It might be as simple as somebody saying, well, we used to wear full aprons and they were so hot. You can come right back and say, oh, we're going to use half ones. Not everybody's problem is the same. They're not going to feel comfortable telling you what their problem is in front of other people, so they're just going to try and get everybody to gang up and become very explosive. Do it one-on-one. When you roll the program out, that's your management side, and this is where a lot of my clients are going wrong. If you're going to tell your people to wear aprons and whisk brooms are really handy, then you have to have the whisk brooms. Or they're not going to think they're handy, because why would you roll something up that you think is wonderful and not have the whole thing there? That's like giving somebody a new car and not giving them keys to drive it. They're not going to believe in you very much. You dropped the ball. So you've got to make sure you have a good training program in place, that you're going to sit there and watch them use these tools. You're going to show them how to use it. You're going to provide all the tools, and you're going to follow up and watch them, and you're going to find out from them, how do you like this? Is this working for you? Try these new things. I highly recommend that you actually try and do it with a process. If you go to successmadeeasy.com, you will see the video, the core training tapes, which is where I took every single example out of today, but you don't have to use that. I recommend you use some of these tips if you are not. Get yourself some aprons. Don't fight it. It is simply more efficient. And thank you very much for watching. Watch the demos. There's 7 minutes of each demo online of the 5 modules from core training. They in themselves might be able to help you. I do have a half-price sale today. If you're watching this after the half-price sale and you want to get core and you don't have the newsletter, give me a call or email me and I'll cut you a deal. Thanks a lot for stopping to watch us, and I look forward to seeing you on our next webinar.